So, Evelyn, you work a lot with TAE and you help people work with it. And there's something special about how you guide people. So, we're going to be exploring it together today.
Mm. Yeah, it's a thank you for this nice kind of starting point. And first, I didn't really think about it, and one participant of a course was bringing that up, and I like the last, I would say, 2 years or so, maybe even longer. I'm really working on that. How I'm guiding in TAE and I can say maybe the metaphor which came very early was like I'm sailing on the edge of where denser and less denser water is coming together. And
so let's just stay there.
Yeah.
So you're staying on the edge of where denser and less dense water are coming together, and as you were describing it, there's kind of a hand gesture that feels it, suggests to me that being in that place is not just an intellectual place for you, but almost that your body is dancing, teetering, walking, that you have some kind of a almost physical consciousness of this process.
I do. I actually really do. And it's as soon as I'm describing that, I'm connecting to the place in my body also from where I'm guiding from.
Mm-hmm.
So I once figured out that I'm guiding from the solar plexus place, kind of, which a yoga person told me that that's also the place more kind of also connected with curiosity, I think. And so I have to read that again or anyway, but I connect to that place immediately, and this and it's so, and also I might just say a bit more about this.
Let me just to get slowly. So you're connecting. You have a sense of where in your body you're connecting with, and that's with the solar plexus. Okay, and so and it might be that it has to do with curiosity. I'm curious about whether it might have to do with balance, because we were talking about dancing, teetering, or the metaphors that came there. So, but in a way, we don't, necessarily even have to understand that. What counts is you have that sense of there's something coming from your solar plexus in the work you do.
Yeah, it's definitely curiosity. I have that. It's kind of a original curiosity, like a childlike curiosity. I have that already very clear. But I'm interested now in your balance, because it's really something of I'm just at the right place. And this tries to explain this, like this line between denser and less denser water. I'm just at the place of and the place is the being on this edge of the other person's process. I can't be in the other place, the other person's process, but I'm trying to follow as close as I can, and it's definitely a felt sense process. It's a felt sensing in myself. So
just again, I'm slowing it down, and so your hand gesture is the hand coming forward, and you're talking about being at the edge, that physical sense of being at the edge, but the edge is not between, say, the image before was denser and less dense water. What you're clarifying is you're at the edge in the sense that you're not in the other person's process. You're not totally separate, but you're at the edge of that. And there is a kind of staying at the edge of that.
Yeah, it's and I have two things to say about that. So in finding this edge is, so I need the words of the other person. You know, I'm sensing, because the words and the explication of the other person let me kind of go also more in this, you know, I say content, you know, it's because it's also about content in TAE, in guiding in TAE. So so that brings me the kind of uh, the density. If I have enough density and I can follow closer, kind of. Yeah, that was one thing.
So just again, just slowly. So there's something about how the words of the other person bring you closer to that density.
Yeah, it's like they are informing me, and from that questions come. It's like the questions come as a offer, and as and then if the questions are right for the other person, and if the closer I am, the more I can follow the other person, the more right usually the questions are for the other person.
So
and that gives me again a feedback of, and like that.
Sorry, I'm going to again slow down, because you know what I'm describing again is like both the words, but also the body language. And so there's something that seems to be coming from inside, and maybe from that solar plexus area, and then you move your hand forward in a sense of offering gesture, and that's where the questions come from. And so you experience the questions as an offering, and that the more the closer you are to understanding what's happening, the more the questions are going to be appropriate for that person.
Yes. So that's also the interactional part. You know, this is the my side of the interaction is to offer questions, and you know, and also to reflect. And I'm also writing. Actually, also the writing process. If I do online, I use the computer. I'm faster actually there to write. The writing also gives me a bodily experience of digestion, kind of what taking in what the other person says. That's even a real bodily experience. I have to write. So that's one way.
But so again, I'm slowing down. That the question. You can view the question as part of the interaction, and that sense of, you know, interaction. Each person is offering something, and you offer the question, and then you realize that actually it's not just the questions that you offer, but there is also a taking in. And so you know, what you say, but even what you write, you experience the writing of it as a bodily taking in of what the other person is saying.
Yeah, and there are really, this is a pure bodily kind of process, and then there is this. Sure, I also understand with my kind of, you know, my mind, a real understanding. Although I also can guide people when I don't understand. But you know, if I understand, it's much easier for me. So it's that process, and it is the kind of the interaction on this like, you know, non-verbal being with a person process. And they are all I just split them, you know, but it's a whole interaction with the other person, with all these different channels, if you want to name them like that. And that brings me...
Hold on, just don't slow down. So the importance of that interaction process, and without wanting to be unitary and splitting them, you can notice an aspect of it, which is your understanding, and so in a way your own process of digesting it, making how it you make sense of it, but also something about the process of being with the other person, physically, emotionally, the body language, and that sense of connection itself. And all of this is part of what happens in this process.
Yeah, so I think that's this part of this, sailing at the edge of the denser and less denser water. I have described, but I also want to describe why I'm not, you could ask me, why don't you go closer? Why don't you go in this dense place? The dense place is kind of a symbol of the other person's process. Why don't I go in, And the reason why is because I also need my own process going on. If I only would mirror in some way, or if I only would take in the other person's process without having my own process going on, I would lose the kind of my experience and my knowledge about TAE, about how to guide, about whatever experience I have. So this is like also going on, and it's not a conscious, I don't think, what step can I use now, or so, or what question could I ask now. This is not a knowing in my, in my mind. This is really a bodily knowing, the experience kind of, I cross it kind of with my own experience. But for that, I have to kind of be a bit, I can't dissolve with the other person. So this is also important.
So that question is, so why at the edge as opposed to crossing the border? In a way, wouldn't you be more effective if you were in the other person's process? And no, because what would be lost is you. And what makes the process effective is that you're there, you're a person, you're not just, obviously you're the person who knows the TAE process and has experience of it, but in a broader way, you're also another person. And so if that person dissolves into it, then you no longer have that process.
Yeah, and just I'm just also going into this kind of experience of guiding other people, and it's so enriching for me. And I'm always also surprised about my questions which are coming. If I try to write down questions, I can write down a lot of questions, when I'm sitting on my table, but this it kind of triggers my own creativity. And it's such a meaningful process, It's like I'm, if people are paying me to guide them, I always say I should pay, because it's such a meaningful process, and it's kind of I sometimes say it's like the last adventure you can do, because all the land is already, we know we have a landscape of all our earth, and this is a real adventurous kind of process, and you don't know what's coming, and so it's just so meaningful.
And so another aspect of being at the edge as opposed to being merged is that there's how much it enriches you. There is a real exchange there, and obviously you're contributing something to the person's process, but you're also enriched by having been part of that. and you come to see it as something that is as enriching as what it was to discover new lands when there were still a lot of unknown territory in the world.
Yeah, and from there I just, my main kind of mission in some ways to bring this kind of process to teams, and I always, it's like my idea is if people, and I already have experienced that with teams, if you really experience this enrichment by other people's process, kind of if someone else has a knowing and is really able to explicate the knowing, and this experience of really taking in other people's knowing, and this is such an enriching process. And if that would, as more you really experience that, the less you would be competitive or kind of, and the same is true for, I would say, understanding other people's culture, and so and that's the way also of working with teams, actually, to let them experience how it really is to take in other people's experience, knowledge.
So I have a sense in listening to what you said that there is a lot more in it than simply stating it would be, and maybe we'll come back a little bit. But what I'm hearing is that it is so enriching to be at the edge, being enriched by other people's experience and process, that actually when you are, it feeds you in a way that reduces the impulse to be competitive or aggressive, because it's so satisfying. And I get a sense of, if only people are able to experience that, then it changes the way people behave. And so there's an implied wish that it has an educational, component to it that might change the way people behave.
Yeah, definitely it is. Yeah, good. Yeah, I could say much more about the guiding, and maybe going back to that process again. I mentioned it before, that this importance of listening to the other person, and to listen, and that without the explication, like without the words, without what the other person has to say or to show. Also gestures, you are reflecting often my gestures also, or it can be a painting. I also work with gestures, actually, in my TAE courses, and even postures, which can be very, very helpful to express the not yet having in words. So, and one aspect of also in this guiding process is to really have explications very, very precise. So the more precise, so I know it's very helpful for the other person. This is part of the explication process, and the kind of the task of my guiding, to help the other person, having the words very precise, and and that also again feeds my preciseness of how I can guide. So you see in every aspect of what helps or what the other person is doing is really coming back into my guiding process and how it can go on.
Yeah. So you're talking about what you do, and the guiding is an accompanying, as being with the other person, reflecting, including body language, posture. But the result of this process is priming the person in a place where they're more in touch with the possibility of the right words, the precise words coming in. And there's something, the quality of precision is something that is an important part in terms of how it resonates. And you're noticing that, that quality of precision and the resonance is something that in turn affects you and helps you. And so there is that kind of a loop where there is an increasing level of clarity in this process.
Yeah, it's kind of the same loop in some way. It's not the same because, I also bring my person, my human being in the process, but it is also this loop of what's going on in this TAE, in this thinking at the edge process. This, this explicating, and then you take in your own words, and that helps to enrich your felt sense where you are coming from. So it is this loop of what we really need in this process. It's a very precise explication, and then this enriches again the felt sense from where you talk, and I like the word enriching there.
Yeah. And so again, as we're talking about loop, and specifically we're talking about the loop between the felt sense and finding the precise words, and then the precise words enrich the felt sense, or let it open up, and then more precision comes. But as we're talking about loop, essentially loop is another word for process. So again, we're talking about, how this is a process. This is a very alive process.
Yeah, it is. And when you say a live process, then also the life of the person is really coming in. It's like I have done a lot of work of, also in the guiding process of having a safe kind of environment, and also to you dip very deep into yourself if you do this TAE process. So a lot comes up, especially if you work with instances and former events in your life, and so it can get very overwhelming for the person. And I do a lot of work there to what I call to enable a functional self-relationship. It's not only about this process of explication, but it's a whole, the other person is a human being too, and there comes a lot, it's like it triggers a lot of emotions, a lot of and it's not always easy. The process itself, it's not always easy to stay with unknown, and so a big part of the guiding is also to be sure that the persons I'm guiding stays in a which I call very, might sound cold to a lot of people, like functional self-relationship, because it doesn't have to be good. It's like sometimes in creative processes, it's just like it's a birth process. It's combined with pain. It's combined with but still to make it possible, and to have to hold also the other person, and that the other person finds a way to be with her or himself, such that the process can go on.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I don't want to miss that part of the guiding.
So the thing you responded to with that notion of a live process, and in thinking about it as a live process, we're not just talking about the process, but really talking about the fact that there's a person. And a person is not just a problem to solve, and it's not just ideas, but there's also feelings, there's unresolved situations from the past, there's everything that makes a human being a human being. And all of that is stirred up in the process. And, it's not the kind of Hollywood stirring up where everything is fun and easy. It can be complex and painful. But in that complexity is actually something where there is a renegotiation of the person's relationship with themselves, and that's why you think of it in terms of functional self relationship. And so in a way, that's a moment where, in confronting this issue that's unresolved, what is changing is not just finding an answer to this issue, but is actually the person is transformed. And so resolving the issue is a defining moment, because in order to resolve the issue, you cannot resolve it from the mindset or the structure that was before, but something changes. And then you change as the person, and the world around you and your relationship with yourself and the world has changed.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that, because it's really, the focus is about the whatever you are working on, the project, the idea, that's the focus. And but in working on that, you can't do that without working on yourself. Exactly what you say. There has to be a self change, and that's something very interesting to. And I'm very much aware of this overlapping kind of interlocked process. And so I also, in this TAE description, Gendlin is kind of very clear. You put that all aside, and also when how he was talking about it. But I take it in. I take it as if a person comes to a difficult place, if it's not possible to work around, I stay there. I do a little bit of a focusing process, kind of, and then I'm asking it, how is that now relevant for your TAE process? And that's often so enriching. It's so informative in bringing in the actual instance and the difficulty of something in the process back. This is there often comes a real kind of shift and a new understanding and a new. So but what I'm doing and what's maybe really a bit different from a focusing process, I'm not staying in, it's hard to describe, it's not like my focus is not the life process itself, but it is the process of what is developed, which is happening in a life process.
Yeah.
It's a bit, I don't know.
Yeah, and so maybe I'm gonna restate it, and so something I think we're talking about here is something that is a little bit of a paradox, or describing the similarities and the differences between the focusing process and the TAE process. So in what is certainly something that seems like an apparent similarity, is that in order to actually effectively go through the TAE process, when you're stuck in a place that is personal and emotional, it really serves to stay there and let it unfold. in order for the process of the TAE to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, there's a similarity with focusing. Where there is a difference is that in focusing, that unfolding is the goal, or is what we're looking for. In TAE, it is in a way a means to an end, because the focus on the contract is on solving the problem. And we're going through that personal roadblock as a way to accomplish that contract.
Yeah. That, and I wrote a lot it, and always, people often ask, what's the difference? And it's in some way we work with the felt sense. That's the common field, and the working is not just about the last paper I wrote, I made a distinction between a focusing session and the TAE process. You do like little focusing sessions. Each step in TAE is like a focusing session. You have like in the felt sense, you let the felt sense come again, and then you do kind of an explication from there a bit. But it's like it's many, and you always stay with the same theme. And this is what we usually don't do in focusing. We stay over time, over weeks, months, years, with the same kind of and not same felt sense, because it changes if you explicate it in some way. So it is very difficult in some way to distinguish, but it also depends on what you understand what focusing is. I think there's the most. What is focusing? For me, focusing is letting a felt sense form, and in that way, it's the first time form, which you need at the beginning of a TAE process, and then there is an explication process, which is like what TAE is doing, but you have to, the felt sense has to be reformed again and again, which is always a focusing process, and always this dipping into the felt sense and going back and forth, the zigzag process. That's like focusing. So it is really difficult to, but TAE is kind of definitely has this, what you say, it has a kind of a goal to elaborate an idea or something you feel, and you don't have the words yet, so without really knowing where it goes.
So what I'm hearing is that the DNA of the process is the same, in the sense that we go into the felt sense, we pay attention to the felt sense, we find meaning, and that creates the dynamic for going forward. And in that sense, the two are based on that same process.
Yeah, and it's maybe really better expressed by this title of Gendlin's first book, like Experiencing and Creation, Meaning.
Yeah.
So I think that really captures.
So that's a process of experiencing and the creation of meaning.
Yeah.
But then what makes the difference between both forms is that in focusing, we kind of have more of a free-form approach to following the felt sense where it goes, and being guided by the unfolding of the implicit and following it where it goes. Whereas in a TAE process, we have a goal, and we're using that process of experiencing and creation of meaning in a way to help us accomplish that goal.
Yeah, I wouldn't even name it a goal, so I wouldn't even do it as kind of in this wording. But there is a theme. Let's say
a theme.
There is a theme. Yeah, there is a theme we want to unfold. And that's also one of the tasks of the guiding, really to stay with the relevance of your felt sense, let's say it like that. And that's the theme, kind of, because it's very easy to run away, So, and I'm always, and it might shift also, it might, after you have worked for 4 days on in a workshop on a theme, you find out, oh, the core I really want to work on, now I found it. And it's a bit different, definitely, than what you thought about at the beginning of it. That's okay. But once you really found the core of what you are working on, staying with that is very important. Because the tendency, just to slip away and
So I'm noticing again the hand gestures, your two hands coming together, and evokes for me, together with your language, a sense of channeling. So it's not going to be, there's a lot of energy that's liberated in this process. And in this case, we just want to give it enough freedom to be alive, but also at the same time channel it so that it goes in the direction, in the service of that theme or of that exploration.
Yeah, and it's interesting, it helps me a lot, your reflections. It's somehow not going into the direction, but it is like staying with where it's coming from. You see, it's not. And that's why I don't want to have.
No, but so that's a very important distinction, because in a way, if we describe it in the sense of going into a direction or channeling it into a direction, it makes it a more external process. And what your experience is, it's actually about staying with where it's coming from.
Yeah.
And so. Maybe in a way keeping more of the focus and the attention on where that query comes from.
Yeah, and that's like I really always make a point in the TAE process to go back again and again and again to the felt sense, because sometimes you lose that by following the steps, especially if you learn it, and to this is so important. This is what it is about, So that's the most important thing, to really have that core, or that kind of to find the core where it's worth to work from, and have it kind of as a felt sense, and have it bodily in you, and to go back to that again and again, and to that's very, very important. So, and also in all your explications, to it's also this checking back. It's not only explicating from it, but the checking back, which I kind of talked about before, about having it precise. It's implicit to check back. Definitely, direct referencing.
So that the DNA of the focusing process, the experiencing and creation of meaning, is that checking back. And then the precision is about how it actually is in sync. What you're talking about here is to, saying to stay in touch with the core of it. And I'm struck by, as you use the word, the core of it, is at the beginning of this discussion, we were talking about the physical experience of it in the solar plexus, and which is close enough to the core of the body. And I'm curious about whether I'm making more of it than it is, or whether there is kind of a correspondence between that sensation of the core in the body and the core of that exploration.
Yeah, I can't say it for other people, but for me it's very interesting. For me, my core, my felt sensing about if I have projects, usually is taking place like in the belly area. So it's definitely not the solar plexus. You know, sometimes I have there something. So, you know, every person is different, but my knowing, but it's in the core of the body, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's in the core of the body. And I also want to say, when I'm having what I was talking about before, like this functional self-relationship, when I'm asking questions, it's really coming kind of from the heart, kind of more from the chest area. So I have different places there. So it's easy for me, once I noticed that somehow I came to that. It's easy to me to, you know, and I'm not strict, you know, but like in the guiding, to stay with the solar plexus, sometimes you're not concentrated or so, and then to go back to that place. So that helps me in that way. So it's really localized, but definitely in the core of the body.
Yeah.
So,
But so there is a localization for you. And you know, we were talking first in the beginning of the conversation about the solar plexus. You're very aware that a lot of your reactions are coming from your belly, and the coming out is coming from the heart. And so the knowing that localization helps you come back to it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so okay, so that was a bit of a
So I want to just check. I want to just, as we're coming toward the end, I want to just check if something is missing, or if there is something you want to say to wrap it up, or just let's take a moment to see how we're going to conclude this.
Yeah, maybe because we talked about this difference about having a goal and then, you know, to go towards and in this direction and having a direction from this, and also coming from the core, you know, and always staying with that and coming from the source kind of it. I also have a nice metaphor of that process, and it is like a skier which forms the spur in going forward. You know, so you only, and Gendlin is talking about it, you only know retrospectively where it came from. So, and that's also, it's like you don't really know where you go, but there is some kind of a driving force, you know. It's like this kind of coming from the core, which is in the metaphor is the height of the mountain, you know, because you that's what brings you down, and then but where you go, and maybe, you know, you do these loops and these side tracks and whatever. This is not, but there is some kind of the spur, the process forms in the going. So, and that also again makes it so exciting.
So maybe trying something there is that, you know, there's something in that process, in that spurring, that it's not necessarily the knowing where you're going, but you're embodying the going.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, that's nice to say. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a real body process. Yeah. Full body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Evelyn.
Yeah, it was very enriching for me also.